Hey everybody, Brett from AstartesGaming here, back with another Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord developer blog video. This is the developer blog for last week, which was, let's see, September 6th, 2018. And this blog focuses on frequently asked questions from the community following Bannerlord. And there is some unfortunate news in here that I will get more into in just a second. But let's go ahead and read through this, and then I'll discuss each question with you guys on top of what just the basic answer was. So with GamesCom behind us and everyone back in work after taking some much needed time off to recover, we have had the chance to sit down and work our way through the major talking points to come out of this year's expo. For some of the topics, we plan to expand upon them and explain them in greater detail at a later date in their own dedicated blogs, but for now we want to clarify some of the things that were said in the interviews that took place during the event. Okay, we have a screenshot of the town system here. Will the game release in early access? We feel that some form of early access would be beneficial for getting community feedback and balancing game elements. It would also allow dedicated fans to access the game sooner. Therefore, our intention is to take this path at some point. However, we do not have a specific time frame for this. Yeah, so we knew this in one of the interviews. They said flat out that they were going to do some form of early access. So I would have been incredibly surprised to see them kind of renege on that here, but they obviously didn't. They're just kind of putting it off indefinitely, so there's no time frame for it. We have no idea how soon it will be. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later, but we've been hoping for that for years. So don't get your hopes up, but you know, it'd be nice to see it soon. Will there be dynasties or families in the game? Players will be able to have family members and children. That's awesome. I know a lot of people are really excited about that. Time flows faster in Bannerlord when compared to Warband, with the year currently being set to 84 days. We'll probably fine-tune this further before release. I don't remember how long a year was in Warband, but it took a long time to advance time in Warband. You know, a day cycle wasn't particularly long, but it felt like those days never really led to anything. I recall trying to wait out sieges and it taking an eternity, to the point where like entire wars would start and end in the time it took to basically, you know, wait out one whole siege. So hopefully they've, you know, fixed stuff like that, and we'll see this being maybe a little bit more palatable at 84 days. If you're going to have like families and children and inheritance and permadeath, you really need something that's going to move faster, and so they say that's what they're doing here. But if it takes like 100 hours for your children to come of age, then obviously that permadeath system might be a little bit flawed. But I imagine that they've already fine-tuned this to a degree, and then once they do the early access, they'll have a better idea of how long this stuff needs to take. So we can only hope they get it all sorted out. Can the player and/or AI lords permanently die? Our current plan is to have this for both players and NPCs, but we'll add an easy mode option to disable it for the player character. Players will be able to continue with the family member if their main character dies. I think that's perfect. Yeah, so it's in, but if you don't want it to affect you personally, if you'd rather just play as one character the entire time, you can opt out of that. It's always great to have more choices. You know, if I was doing like a story playthrough or something, I wanted to role play one character the entire time, I could do that. Or, you know, if I want to just play the normal lineage system, I can do that. So it sounds like either way the NPC characters will still be affected. This is nice because it was kind of infuriating in Warband to have lords that would eventually become your rivals, that there's just really nothing you could do against them. You could defeat them 100 times and capture them and ransom them, or try to lock them up in a dungeon, but inevitably they would probably escape. And so there was very little you could do to deal with characters like that. Now, you can kill them. How you can kill them, I'm not quite sure. Obviously, they can die in battle. We know that much. But if you are able to capture them and maybe lock them up in a dungeon, is there an option to like execute them? I haven't seen anything regarding that, but it would certainly be nice. Moving on, will the game have co-op? It's a very common question and one that gets kind of put down fairly often, but I was kind of surprised by their answer here. And I think the conclusion that they've come to is probably the best one. So adding co-op functionality to Bannerlord would increase the complexity and development time of the project. That's one thing that always gets me, is that every time I make a Bannerlord video, a very large portion of the comments is just people complaining that it's still not released, which, if you're still here at this point and you're still complaining at this point, that it's kind of your own fault. If you're fed up with the time it's taken, then move on to something else. If you're willing to wait, then wait. But complaining's not going to do anybody any good. It's not going to make the game come out faster. So I don't understand that. But anyways, that is a large portion of the comments I see on these videos and other Bannerlord videos and on the Bannerlord and Warband subreddits. But then we have people actively trying to get more stuff put into the game that's only going to delay that further, especially something like a full co-op system that's going to require a complete overhaul of the game, because that was never really intended. So something like that would delay the game significantly. Anyways, development time of the project considerably, and therefore it will not be included in release. We can hopefully add it as a DLC after release. We think the only viable way to support this is to make a single-party co-op where additional players can join the main player's battles but cannot venture into the campaign map on their own. I can't see a way where they could make like a multiple, like a co-op campaign map work. It would be insanely complex to code, because you would have people going in and out of battles, and so what happens to the person outside of battle when you go into battle? Does time just stop for them and they have to wait? There are ways around that, and I guess that's sort of what they've done here, where you're essentially just doing co-op for the actual battles. So it's kind of like playing a single player Total War campaign, where you can have somebody join in to control the AI and basically fight the battle as if it were a multiplayer battle, but in the context of your single player campaign. Although here it sounds like they are going to be potentially on your side. Generally co-op, I get the impression of working together. So maybe you can have them command the opposing army for the AI, or maybe they're stuck just fighting alongside you. It's difficult to say based on the wording here, but they will be able to interact with you in battle to some degree, whether they're on your side or not. So they look to be completely disregarding the option of having the other player in the campaign map at all. And again, I don't mind that. I know there are people that will. I was never a huge proponent of campaign co-op campaign anyways, so it doesn't really affect me. But if they wanted to work in some co-op to the actual campaign map, the only way I see it working is that basically you guys run around independently of one another and pause is disabled. Then when somebody goes into battle, you get what they've done, or what they've suggested here, where the other person has to basically join the battle in some way, shape, or form. Either they just spectate it, or they fight on your side or the other side. But obviously it would have to take them out of the campaign map, because otherwise time would be advancing for them and not for you, and then you come back and time's advanced significantly, whereas in a single player campaign time wouldn't advance at all. And so there would be a lot of balancing that would have to go along with rebalancing, if they did not have the other person join. And then again, there's the issue of not being able to pause. If people were fighting battles too frequently, it could be very frustrating for the other player. So I see co-op as a little bit too big of an issue, and I just think it's something we should kind of abandon hope for, because I just don't think it would work satisfyingly. But I know there are people that are going to hold on to it till the bitter end, and so at least they're considering this as an idea. Could you tell us the specs of the computers used for the demo? We haven't done final optimization pass of the game just yet, and this is something that we'll come towards. the end of development, we are aiming to make the game playable on a wide range of systems, but for the purposes of this demo, we use some high-end gaming laptops. So they had an NVIDIA 770K 4.2 gigahertz CPU, an NVIDIA 1080 GPU, 32 gigs of RAM, and a 1 terabyte solid-state drive. Now, that's a pretty good little gaming laptop, but obviously most people's desktops, if it's a dedicated gaming rig, are going to be a little bit beefier than that. So I think it should be playable on medium range systems fairly well. I imagine they're going to have battle downscaling like they did in Warband, where you can kind of adjust the size of battles or how many troops are on the battlefield at any given time to kind of help with the performance. But given that the game is not exactly graphically cutting edge, I don't think it'll be a major problem to run. I guess we'll see. They are significantly increasing the size of battles, or they're trying to. They were talking about hundreds on each side, where in Warband, I think, unless you modify the game with third-party stuff, you couldn't do more than like 150 on the side. I think that's the default slider range. So can we still build castles and villages? This was the biggest thing for me here, and really disappointing what they decided. So we had to drop that feature. So this is completely out now, which is a real shame, because it was way back when I made my top 10 features that are going to be in Bannerlord. This was among them, because I was really excited about fiefs being a little bit more independent of one another, and you having a lot more vertical mobility. I don't know that that's quite the right way to say that, but anyways, you were able to take like a very bare bones fief and build it up into something that really showed how far you came as a character, and that is kind of no longer the case. So at some point in development, fief management became too complex, with towns, castles, and villages each having their own specific management screens. The ability to build castles in villages also gave rise to complex rules. For example, demolishing the castle in a village could potentially revert the village to another kingdom, and we had to add complex logic to handle that. Overall, we felt the design had become too bloated and unappealing. So the solution was changing the status of villages so that they would no longer be considered independent fiefs, but were always attached to a castle or town. This removed the necessity to have a management screen for villages and simplified and streamlined the system. The aesthetics of our new villages is also much more pleasing. Yeah, I don't find that to be a satisfying answer, because the issue I believe they're running into, and they didn't word it very well here, but I read about it elsewhere and it made more sense, is essentially villages are tied to castles just like they are in Warband. However, when you upgraded the village to a castle, it became its own independent thing, because it was no longer tied to another castle. You wouldn't want a castle that's tied to another castle, because now they're equivalent. But if you, for whatever reason, demolish that castle, maybe that's something that can happen in the course of gameplay, like not you just randomly choosing to demolish it, but maybe it gets destroyed in the siege or something. I don't know. But by the castle getting demolished, it reverts it back into a village, which tries to attach it back to the castle, but the castle might not be part of the same faction as the village now. And that was, I think, the issue that they're running into. I don't see why villages need to be tied to castles in the first place. I would say just make them completely independent. And it sounds like they kind of allude that maybe they were at one point. But I don't see why they need to be tied to a castle. In Warband, they were, and it worked fine because villages were, very static things. All the fiefs were. But I think that the system that they were going to add here, where every fief could be built up, a village could become a castle, could become... I don't think they could become towns, but it would be very cool if there was that much fluidity in it. But unfortunately, they were, I guess, more married to the idea of these villages being tied to castles. And I think part of that is they're trying to give it some air of historical correctness, I guess, where you would have a village, and then, you know, that's ruled over by, we'll just say a baron, but probably not a baron. And then you'd have like the duke in his castle that kind of rules over that whole area of several barons. And this is a terrible example, but I think they're going for something like that. I just don't think it necessarily needed to be in here. I think villages could be completely independent. Even if they constantly got conquered and reconquered, I think that's better than what we've got here. But anyways, it's out, and we just need to move on. Are we able to join minor factions? You can hire some minor factions as mercenaries or enlist them to your kingdom in other ways, but there's currently no way to join minor factions as a member. I also found that to be really disappointing. I can't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to. They are factions after all, and they're not landed, so I feel like it should be fairly easy for you to just join up, and basically your party becomes part of their faction group, and you get the same alliances and enemies that they do, and then when you leave, you just cease to be part of that faction group. I don't think it would be that hard, and I think it would add a lot of really interesting gameplay. At least you can interact with them, but I think the interaction could be a lot deeper than it is. And then, of course, what's the release date? I don't know why people keep asking this. They give the same answer every time. We made the decision some time ago to not announce or speculate on a release date, and as such, we currently don't have a release date to share with you. As soon as we are confident the game is ready for people to play, we will make an announcement. That's been their policy for the last 6, 7, 8 years now, and some people just don't get it, but they've never given a different answer, so I don't know what people are expecting at this point. Next week, it looks like, well, I say next week, this blog will be probably releasing alongside this video. They're going to be talking to a game engine developer. I know the game engine was one of the major reasons that the game has taken so long, is they've had to rework it several times over. So it'll be interesting to see if we hear more about that in that blog. Every once in a while, these interviews release some good information, but sometimes they're just filler, so it's kind of a crapshoot in that regard. But that's it for today's, so I'll go ahead and leave it here. If you guys have any questions, I will try to answer them. I was going to do a video on a forum post that basically covered everything from Gamescom that was revealed. Somebody went and took screenshots of all the encyclopedia entries with all the different factions and stuff, but I couldn't find a way to make it watchable. It just became very bulky because there was so much content, and I guess I could break that up into several smaller videos. I'll have to see about that though, but I'm not in any real rush to do it, especially since I kind of get the feeling things are going to cool off again after Gamescom. I get the feeling that they're going to kind of let the hype die down again, because that's just what they've been doing, is they do these conventions, they put out a little bit of, although I think E3 last year was really disappointing. I don't think they really did much, if anything at all, there. But anyways, generally what they do is at these conventions, they'll put out some gameplay stuff, people will get really excited, and then they'll just kind of disappear for a little while. And we don't hear anything from them, and the hype dies down, and then the next convention comes, and they get us back up, and then we go back down. But anyways, we'll see what happens here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I had a great time talking about some Bannerlord with you, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here for my next video.